Welcome to episode 323 of the AM/PM podcast. In this episode, my guest is none other than Bradley Sutton. Bradley and I talk about his origin story with Helium 10, where Helium 10 is going, what we think the industry's going as far as software and sellers, plus a lot of other cool little stories and tidbits. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the AM/PM podcast. Welcome to the AM/PM podcast, where we explore opportunities in e-commerce.
We dream big and we discover what's working right now.
Plus, this is the podcast where money never sleeps, working around the clock in the AM and the PM.
Are you ready for today's episode?
I said, are you ready? Let's do this. Here's your host, Kevin King. Kevin King.
Welcome to the first episode of the AM/PM podcast for 2023. And I wanted to make this first episode epic. So I have a legend in the Amazon space here today. This is someone who doesn't let anything get in his way. Doesn't matter that there's only 24 hours in a day, that ain't going to stop him. Doesn't matter what seller support says, that ain't going to stop him. Even the Grim Reaper can't stop him. I mean, this guy is a legend. He's number 10 in your playbook, but number 1 in your hearts. Bradley Sutton, welcome to the AM/PM podcast.
All right, what an intro. Thanks for having me here.
Tables are turned now. You don't do too many podcasts, do you? You're more the guy doing the interrogations rather than the guy being interrogated.
Right, as Michael Scott from The Office would say, how the turntables.
How the turntables. So, I mean, a lot of people know you as from the Serious Sellers podcast, as the face of Helium 10. You do a lot of the webinars. You're the guy that's constantly out there. Like you're like the symbol. You're like mobile. The oil company had the Pegasus. You're like the Pegasus of Helium 10. But a lot of people don't know the backstory about how you actually got involved with Helium 10. I remember back around 2017, 2018, somewhere around in there. Manny was doing the AM/PM podcast, this exact podcast. He was doing all the webinars. He was out there, and they were growing so fast. They said, "Hey, I got to step back because if I'm the guy as the owner that's tied as the face of this, it's going to make it harder to sell." So I remember him saying, "Hey, we need to find a guy that can take over some of my role and kind of be the face. And we need a guy and we need a girl." And the girl took a little bit longer to find. It was a little bit harder, but you became that guy. And you were pretty instrumental, actually, in actually helping Helium 10. A lot of people don't realize this. Some people think you're the owner of Helium 10. If you go to Pakistan, I remember in some of the Facebook groups over there, they're like, "Who's Bradley Sutton?" "Oh, he's the owner of Helium 10." Some people think you might, but that's not the case. You were just doing your own thing. And then I think Manny met you at Orlando to SellerCon or something like that. Tell us that story about how you actually got involved with Helium 10.
Well, how I got started actually using even Helium 10, like when I first got into the Amazon world, I hadn't even heard of Helium 10. I wasn't using tools in the beginning. I didn't even know about Jungle Scout or any of that stuff. And then I started using some random tools that are now defunct. I forgot what it was called, but I remember it was a tool I would use for keyword tracking. The reason I like them is because they had this feature where you could find influencers on YouTube or something weird and unique like that. So I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." But then it just really sucked. Like it was the worst software in the history. So I actually just recently traced my Helium 10 journey. I found a post. It was by a guy, you might know him. I think he might have been an elite member at one time, Mitul Patel.
Yeah.
It was previously called Zon Blast Zon Squad. What was the name of it? And I had put a post up saying, "Hey, I'm looking for some new software because this one I'm using is crap." And then he replied to me, "Hey, you should check out Helium 10. It is actually funny because I didn't even realize it was him. And now he's been on the Serious Sellers podcast a couple of times. I've known him for years now. But I traced my Helium 10 journey back to that very post where I was like, okay, let me take a look.
About 2016 or so?
Yeah, it was about 2016 or maybe early 2017 around there. And so, yeah, after that, I was just a regular user. I was somebody who was working as a consultant for Amazon sellers. I wasn't doing my own. I didn't have my own products, but I was launching, 20, 30 products a week at one time. I was just going crazy with Zon Blast back in those days. That was my specialty. Wasn't PPC product research. It was just all about launching and keyword research. And
Explain what Zonblast is for those that haven't been selling as old school as we are.
yeah. So Zonblast was this service where you would use like two-step URLs and different kinds of URLs to kind of like mimic searches. And then, you would pay them, say, hey, I need, like X number of orders per day for this many days for this keyword. And, he just boosted you to page one. And in those days, it was not against Amazon terms of service. And so at one point I was like one of their biggest customers or one of their biggest clients. So yeah, it was a great service.
And it was Zonblast and what was it? Viral Launch. That's how they originally started. They wanted software. They were doing that. There was, I think I Love to Review, and there was a whole bunch of them. And that's how you actually, like 2015, 2016, that's how you launched a product. Is you just went to them and they would charge like $500 to $1,000 basically, and they had a list of people on a Facebook group or on a mailing list, and they would go out to them and say, hey, we got this new spatula. We need. Go buy it, and you could do like 99% off or even free in a lot of cases. And then they could actually write reviews, come back and write a review off of this free item as long as they put a little disclaimer in there.
Yep. So it was great. Those are the glory days, like for launching, where it was just so easy. You could do it. I could just do it in my sleep almost. And I just became an expert at it. And then that was what I kind of started getting known for in the Facebook groups, because, nowadays people in Facebook groups, it's funny, like, I don't know what you would call it, but it's like, not really subtweets because it's not Twitter, but people who post in Facebook groups now, like you can they have a hidden agenda. They're just trying to try to get clients or get you to reply so they can slide into your DMs and offer their services. But in those days, I was just like so passionate about it. Like I would do posts where I would just tell people what's going on, and I was not looking for clients at all. Like my client, I never once signed up somebody from Facebook, but I was in the Helium 10 members Facebook group and the FBA high rollers, and then I would love to argue. Like when people are wrong, like that kind of stuff has always bothered me, even since before I worked at Helium 10, where people are misleading other people. That's just one of my pet peeves. Like, if you're going to do something wrong, keep it to yourself. Like, why are you trying to like promote wrong tactics or say that things are working and they don't, or the opposite, So when I would see that, I would go and I would reply and I would put all these graphs and like write these long novels and like why this person was an idiot and stuff like that, of what they were doing. And I guess after a while, Manny and Guy, founders of Helium 10, they're like, who is this guy? Who's this guy who keeps like defending Helium 10 and starting these long arguments and stuff? He seems like interesting. And so, like I had met Manny. He didn't know that was me. It was funny, actually, the first time I saw Manny in person he was with you, just walking around there. I won't remember. I won't forget it, in that SellerCon convention, and you guys were like recording a mobile podcast or something. I was like, "Whoa, this is so cool! Look at these celebrities here. This is so cool." And I just met him because he was from the same, or he had one time I found out he had lived in the same city that I lived in, which is some random city, San Marcos. Like nobody has ever heard of San Marcos. They know of San Diego. And so I just said, "Oh, hi, I live in San Marcos." But then later on, he actually DM'd me. He's like, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you, me and the team, just because I think it's cool what you're doing, in the Facebook groups." And yeah, I went up there and I didn't realize it was an interview for a job because I wasn't looking for a job. And yeah, they hired me then and there.
So what were you employed, like number 12 or 15 or something like that? Or do you remember?
Something like that. Yeah. Like there was only like 10 of us when I got there in the little WeWork. You remember that place?
Yeah. They upgraded. They had one and they outgrew it really quick, and they upgraded to another one and then outgrew that. But yeah, I remember It's crowded in there.
Yeah. It was so cool. Like I remember my first day, I was like, whoa, this is like working at Google or something. They had these two virtual reality machines of those race car games, and there's like a beer on tap, and I was like a ping pong table. I'm like, what in the world? This is so cool.
So that was the old days. I mean, Helium 10 has changed a lot since then.
Yeah, it has. I remember the old days. We would look at kind of like how many people in the Chrome extension, nobody publishes like how many, subscribers, even Helium 10 doesn't really publish that kind of information, like how many subscribers we have. Everybody keeps that proprietary.
You mean paying subscribers?
Yeah. But in Google Chrome store, you can actually see hey, I think the way it works is like how many people have actually used the Chrome extension in the last 60 days or whatever their formula is. The number that you see in the Chrome extension in the Google Chrome store is how many active members, whether they're paying or not, for a certain tool that has a Chrome extension. And so I remember when I first got to the company, it was like number one was Jungle Scout. It was like 120 20,000 or something like that. And then number 2 was Viral Launch. They had like 70,000. And then we were just kind of coming up. It was like 50,000 when I started. And then we were like, when we passed Viral Launch, we were like, oh man, this is so cool. Like, it's a big milestone. Then we caught Jungle Scout was like a momentous occasion since they were on the scene, way before us. And then now it's crazy. It's like we're at 900,000, and the second place is still, I think, at like 400,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and Viral Launch basically doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, like I used to use Viral Launch too, like for those launching things. Like I would use Zonblast for US, and then I would use Viral Launch for like Canada and Europe, because Zonblast didn't do that. And I remember meeting Casey at like a conference when he was just starting, and then I guess he knew about me because of Zonblast was their main competitor, and then he was like trying to get me to come over there. I was like, nah, I'm happy with where I'm at. But then it's like to see all that he achieved, was kind of cool later on.
So Helium 10, but when you joined, it was about 12, 15 people, and now it's somewhere near 300-400 people now when you count all the VAs and programmers and everything.
Yeah, I think like we kind of consider, since our company Assembly, like we just kind of look at it overall, like all of our different companies, and I forgot what the number is like 600 or something like that, or 700. But if you were just to like separate out Helium 10, it's about like 300, I would say. That's
good. What do you think this space is going? I mean, with the software companies, there's so many. Back in 2016, like you said, or even before that, there was just a handful of tools. Now it seems like every day there's some new tool. Either specializes in something or tries to copy somebody else. There's so many tools. Helium 10 is the dominant tool out there, and there's still Jungle Scout, but you don't hear a whole lot from Jungle Scout anymore. I mean, I'm on their email list, and it's crickets a lot of times. I mean, Helium 10's still extremely active. But where do you think, you got Assembly that's buying companies. They bought Helium 10. That was their first one. Assembly was formed to buy Helium 10, and then they bought, PPC and several others. What do you think this software industry is going? You had all these aggregators that were buying up Amazon business, and now you got a few people in the software space trying to buy it up. Where do you think it's going from a software point of view for the Amazon space rather than a seller's point of view?
It's kind of hard to say because, things are not, for a while, nobody was doing anything in this space, like outside of Helium 10, and then that's why we were able to overtake everybody, pretty fast. Like nobody was adding tools or adding features. It was kind of dormant. It was almost as if we didn't have competition. And I kind of, from a business standpoint, it's kind of cool. Like, oh wow, we can dominate the market. But I remember the early days, it was like the space race, like everybody be watching each other, like, oh man, Jungle Scout just launched this, and like, oh man, we got to catch up to this, and then I would hear them say like, oh man, look at what Helium 10 just launched, we got to do it. It was like it was kind of like the 60s space race, U.S. versus Russia, where everybody's trying to one up each other. And then for the longest time, like nobody really has been doing too much innovation, on a big scale. Like there's always going to be smaller tools that kind of do cool stuff. I was looking at one the other day that was pretty cool about brand analytics, that uses brand analytics and things. And those are always cool. But a lot of the bigger companies that are, they've been kind of dormant for a while. So like, I'm assuming, I never like to assume, but, in 2023, we're going to see where this direction is. A lot of the smaller companies were bought up by bigger companies. And then maybe I'm just assuming that this year is we're going to start seeing them, the direction that they're going to go. Like, are they going to be innovating on a certain level, and what will that be? And then who knows? The fun days of before when we were trying to race to the top. Maybe those days will be back. But yeah, I think it's great to see smaller companies just start up with like 1 or 2 or 3 people, kind of like Helium 10 did, and see what they do, and it'll just be interesting to watch where the space goes.
I mean, Manny started Helium 10, and Guy was his partner in a gaming business. And that's how they knew each other, and he brought him over. But it was really Manny who decided to actually sell on Amazon. And he developed because he had a software background and some guys that could do that for him, he started developing like Scribbles and Frankenstein and some stuff for himself. And then he decided, hey, we can actually take this and maybe actually put this out there and actually sell it. Because I remember Manny, I was with him in like 2015, 2016. I remember when he hit $1 million in sales as a seller. And he was selling little air diffusers, and like he had one of the top selling diffusers out there. He had some socks that were like with wine sayings on it. If you can see this, feed me wine, or whatever those little things were, and a few other products that he was doing well. But I remember when he hit $1 million in sales as a seller. But as a seller, he was developing Helium 10 for what he needed as a seller. He was like the guy that was in there, and he's like, man, if I only had this kind of tool, I could do my keyword research better, or I could save me time on this. And that's where a lot of these smaller software companies, like you said, they're a lot of times failed sellers. They're sellers that either started out and they just couldn't cut it because of either cash flow issues or whatever, and they pivot to the software, or they're successful sellers that actually say, hey, we need a tool that does this. Let's develop it. And Helium 10 had that in the beginning when it was a small company, but now as a big company, not too many people actually in Helium 10 actually sell. I mean, you do, Carrie does with Walmart and on Amazon, and there's a few other people that have dabbled in it. And I know everybody has to go through the Freedom Ticket, that starts there and to learn the basics. But how do you maintain that edge? Because to be innovative, like you said, and to be different, you need to be selling, not just a programmer or a corporate person. So how does Helium 10 maintain that? Is it just mostly you come up with the ideas and like, hey, I need this tool, we need this tool, let's develop this, or how does that process work?
Well, that's actually funny, you mentioned that, because I was just thinking the other day about this, and the industry has kind of changed. Like in the early days, it was actually kind of taboo to have a software company and be a seller. And Manny, even like once he started really getting into Helium 10, like he even transferred everything to his brother, because there was this.
People think they're looking in on other accounts and he's stealing ideas.
Yeah, there was this conception out there that these software companies who were started by Amazon sellers, they're just using this as a way to get our data. And there actually was. There was like one guy out there who was like doing something crazy. I forgot what the name of that software was, but where he was actually like trying to spy on his users and see when they had a coupon and something and buy all their inventory up. I don't know if you remember that story.
Oh yeah. He had, it was a very rudimentary software. I mean, this guy, the GUI, the graphical user interface sucked. It was like totally programmer type of software. And yeah, I exactly remember. He's basically, It was good from a programming point of view, but he got a little greedy. And what he did actually, for those of you that may not know the story, is people would set a coupon code to actually do a promotion back when you're doing the Zon Blast, or you're doing the viral launch, or back in the days when you could sell things for like 99% off or free to get something launched. And some people would forget to set a limit of one per customer. Mm-hmm. And he put into his software to how to figure that out when people did that. And he would go in and wipe them out. So someone would set up a launch, and they send 1,000 units in. They're going to do a launch of 300 or whatever the number is to get it going. He would find that they forgot to set the max limit per person, and he would just go take all when they put the coupon out. He would just go take all 1,000 of their units at like 99% off, and then go back on the listing and sell them. And it was a huge controversy.
And so he kind of messed it up for everybody else, because now there's this, just this thought out there that, okay, that's what these companies are doing. They're just going to try and launch their own products and stuff. And so it was actually like, suggested that we didn't hire, like Amazon sellers and things like that. And I was one of the only ones, and basically because I was just starting Project X and things. But now I think it's the opposite. Now people, it's like, wait, if they're not Amazon sellers, like, can we even trust this company that they know what they're doing? And so at Helium 10, we have like a mixture. There's like actually a lot of us, even we have some product managers who sell on Amazon, people on our customer success team, and a lot of we have tons of Amazon sellers. And then we also, formed kind of like advisory boards from all kinds of different cohorts. Like, hey, we've got a 7-figure seller, an 8-figure seller, a brand new seller. We've got somebody who does merch by Amazon. We got this and we got that. Somebody who sells in Japan, and somebody who sells in Germany, and different things that we can like hit up in order to try and make sure that we're meeting what the needs of each of these cohorts are, and then especially we also work very closely with our Helium 10 Elite members, that you're one of the main figures on, but we have a lot of touch points with Elite members, trying to make sure that we're delivering what they need as far as solutions go.
So when someone has an idea, some of the best things have come from other sellers. Like it was Tomer that actually developed the Cerebro tool. And he's the one. I remember Boyan was in Amsterdam. I think 2018 there was an event over in Amsterdam, and Boyan had heard about what Tomera was doing with spreadsheets and analyzing things. And he sat down with him and said, hey, we could automate this entire thing. And that became Cerebro. And so how many other things like that that's now an integral part of Helium 10 that you can recall that came from something like that?
I mean, almost every single thing we have, you could probably trace it back to, some kind of Amazon seller who's using something, whether it's me or whether it's one of our users, like Tomer actually has a couple of them. The in listing analyzer, the media comparison button, how you just can like hit a button and then you have a list of 10 ASINs and you immediately see a layout of all of their images. There was another Tomer original right there. But yeah, like we don't just come up, it'd be a waste of money if we were just coming up with stuff that, nobody really wanted or cared about. So almost every single thing, maybe it doesn't always go to an expert, or it doesn't tie back to an expert or influencer like Tomer, but it goes directly to one of our users. Like we have this button on our website where it's like, hey, suggest your ideas, and people give hundreds of those a week. And we have a team who are, collating those and then compiling to see what are the most things that are wanted. And that's kind of like how we started our Bigger, Better launch series that we started last year in May, where every month we're just, launching different things. Almost all of those come from our users.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. I mean, 'cause just last week, we were doing a Helium 10 Elite Roundtable. So if you're a Helium 10 Elite member, once a month I do a training where we bring on 3 different experts in different fields, and then I do something called the 7 Ninja Hacks, and that's like a 3-hour training that we do every month. But then we also do weekly roundtables where the Helium 10 Elite members they get on a Zoom call, and there's no agenda, there's no training, it's just share ideas and help each other out. And once a month I go on those calls and host one, and we just did one last week actually. And on that call, there's a fellow, Rolando Rosas. He's going to be on the.
I heard about that. Harry told me about that.
He's going to be on the podcast in a couple weeks. But he was talking about how he's doing heat maps, and it was a very interesting thing with his. He sells like office products, and he's like, on the weekends, after about 6 o'clock or so on a Friday, nobody's buying our product. On the weekends, just the sales go basically to zero almost. And he said, what's the point of advertising on the weekends? And he actually went back and they analyzed their last year's worth of orders. So they did it manually with like pivot tables and stuff in a spreadsheet. They downloaded the last year's worth of orders, and they tracked them. And they could see that, okay, these are the days and the times when all of our orders are coming in. It's very distinctive. And he's like, we changed our PPC to do day parting to match exactly when this is. And we've dramatically increased our bottom line, our tacos, everything is so much better. And then he showed us a little demonstration, shared a screen. And I was like, Carrie was on that call, Carrie Miller. And I was like, this needs to be incorporated into Helium 10. I asked him, I said, hey, would you be willing to work? He said, hell yeah, I'll be willing to work with him and put this in there. And I was like, this is like a perfect thing for Elite members. So that's the type of stuff that I think is critical for Helium 10 or any other software company. You need that kind of people that are in the weeds doing this and have come up with an innovative solution, and then you guys being able to do it at scale and like use all the data and the systems that you have to just blow the thing up.
Yeah. That's I heard about that. I wanted to take a look at that, but the heat maps that we have, that those originally came from Amazon sellers too. How we have the inventory heat maps. Like when I was doing the launching before a lot, that was kind of critical, because you didn't want to like launch your or turn your products active until you had a little bit better distribution across the country. It's kind of convoluted to download the Amazon reports to figure out where your inventory is at, unless you memorize all of those, those DC codes and stuff. And then so like that was how inventory heat maps were made. So like we can see exactly where our products are, like when a warehouse is on strike or burns down or something, which literally, these things happen, you want to know how many units did you have at that place. And so that's why we had the inventory heat maps. And then people were like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to map out our sales. Like, do we have, hot pockets in the country or by county where people are selling or cold zones where like we can't seem to get a sale. So the cool thing about a lot of this stuff is that there's not one way to use information. You could take this exact same bit of information and 2 people could do completely opposite things. Like if somebody sees that they're heavily selling in a certain city or something, maybe they want to double down and hit that area with Google ads or Facebook ads or something. Somebody sees a completely cold area, instead of ignoring it, maybe the other person takes that same exact information and say, you know what, I got to go try and push some ads to this place where I'm not selling anything. So that's one thing I think that's really cool about, that we've always done is we don't try and tell people like necessarily, hey, there's only one way to use this information. It's like, here's the information, you go do with it what you want. It's really cool to see how people have completely opposite strategies and both are totally fine.
Now you're a Helium 10 diehard through and through. I mean, you even at your house there in the San Diego area, you built a basketball court. And tell me about this basketball court and how it relates to Helium 10.
Yeah, well, it was a lifelong dream for me to always have my own basketball court at my house. Like I never thought it would happen before, but circumstances came up where I was like, hey, I can afford this. And so I made a basketball court, but instead of just being a plain one, I put a big old Helium 10 logo right there at center court, there. So that was, I was like, because it's kind of thanks to Helium 10 that I could afford to do something like that. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to give back and show my love. And then whenever people come to play basketball, they're like, hey, what is this? It gives me a chance to evangelize about what Helium 10 does.
And are you having to pay licensing fees to Helium 10 for use of that logo?
No, it should be opposite. They should be paying me for, crypto.com, pays this company or this arena to put their logo at center court, but I never charged Helium 10 for that.
Yeah, I know when Manny and Guy, they developed they started Helium 10 in really early 2016. Manny started selling in 2015. Started the podcast, this AMPM podcast, to document his journey, and then when Helium 10 started taking off, he just basically had no time to do the podcast anymore. It was a great lead generator, a great publicity thing, and it stopped. And then for about a year, nobody did the AMPM podcast. You came to them and you said, hey, let's bring the podcast back, or how did that work? And instead of you bringing back AMPM, you decided let's change it and call it Serious Sellers. How did that? Walk me through how that all got started.
Yeah, so I had never done a podcast, before. Like my first ever even being a guest like this on the podcast was right here on just like AMPM podcast. I think was the first podcast that you were ever a guest on, right?
Yeah.
That was also the first time that I was ever a guest. I forgot what number it was. It was like in the 170s or something. You definitely beat me there. But they're like, hey, like podcast is, that was what started Helium 10. What was the AMPM podcast. And so we're like, hey, we want to bring this back. But at the same time, it was kind of like Manny and Guy were like, we do want it to be a little bit more Helium 10 related. Of course, AMPM podcast had Helium 10 in it, but it was kind of considered, it was more neutral, like it wasn't just meant to be pushing Helium 10. And we didn't want to make a podcast that was just some kind of Helium 10 homer, but at the same time, we wanted a format where we could make an episode about Helium 10 strategy or something, and people wouldn't be like, oh, this is just a homer. Why is AMPM podcast changing? So we're like, let's still sit on AMPM podcast for a little bit, but let's start from scratch, a brand new one. And then, I forgot who it was. It might've been Manny, might've been Guy, but they're thinking of different names. And they're like, hey, let's kind of like make the format of this like, hey, this is just how it is, and harder hitting and all about strategies, and then hey, like you can call people out if you want to, and instead of just trying to be fluffing people up, and then so let's call it the Serious Sellers podcast, and then so it's like, hey, I'm down with that format. Sometimes it's harder for me to I'm a lover, not a fighter, so like I don't want to always call out people, but sometimes I do. I'm like, somebody says something strange, and if I catch them, like, whoa, wait a minute, buddy, hold on here, let's talk about this for a second, because that doesn't sound right, and so that was just kind of how the concept was made. It took me a little while to get into a groove or to really get into the theme of it. Like the first few episodes was, I was just kind of feeling out how it was going to go, but I think we're in a good place now.
So when Boyan came to me and said, hey, Kevin, this was the summer of 2022, what do you think about taking over the AMPM podcast? We want to make it more Amazon focused. It's been more entrepreneur focused prior. And we want to make it more Amazon focused. We've had quite a few people here in the office submit proposals and stuff to actually host it. But I think you might be good to host it. And I was a little hesitant at first. And I remember I contacted you. I said, this is going to be competing against Bradley in a way. You're going to have two things. And I remember what you said. You said, no, actually, this could be a good thing because look at Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, the two late night hosts or Leno and Letterman or whatever. They can have the same guest on, but it's not the same material. Exactly. And I was like, that actually makes sense because you're going to have a different approach and different questions than what I would have. And it's turned out to be true. We've had, I think Josh Hadley and Tomer and a couple others that we've had Leo, and the episodes are completely different. And it's interesting to see how that's all worked out.
Yeah, I really like, I really like that. And originally, it's very true. Like when we had another host, we kind of went in that direction. We're like, hey, let's not have them be both about Amazon and Walmart. So let's keep Serious Sellers podcast about Amazon, and then let's make the AM/PM podcast more general entrepreneurship and mental health and things like that, about non-Amazon subjects so that they're not competing. But then when we had the chance to kind of reboot it, we're like, no, we don't need to do that at all. The questions that you would ask, are going to be completely different than mine, and you're going to be able to get different aspects and our bread and butter is Amazon and Walmart sellers. And so it just makes sense to be able to serve, that community more by having somebody like yourself do it. And so it's been great. You've been doing record numbers like almost every month, on it. And so it's kind of good that we're we don't know how things work out, but then to see it it work out really well, it's kind of validates our original hypothesis there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun doing it. I enjoy doing it, and it seems to be getting a good reaction from a lot of people. Yeah, I like to try to get inside things a little bit differently and ask questions a little bit differently than what normal. I don't sugarcoat. It's let's get straight to it. Speaking of straight to it, some people don't know, but 2023, you just recently said on a Serious Sellers episode that this is going to be a year where you're going to be really focusing on your health. And it's something that a lot of sellers out there tend to neglect. We're busy working. I work out with a trainer 3 times a week that comes to my house. I have a nutritionist that I have a weekly phone call with. She lives in Miami. And I get weekly massages. I do a lot of things to really take that stress level off. And you're someone that I remember. You're always working. You love to travel, so you're always flying somewhere. I know you just for Christmas you just flew out on the 24th to see your college team, San Jose State, play in the Hawaii Bowl, and you flew back on a red eye or something the next morning. You're always doing these crazy things. And I remember at one of the $1 billion seller summits, we were at lunch, and here's Bradley over in the corner curled up taking a power nap because he's just going. But that caught up to you in 2022, and you had a little bit of a scare. A lot of people may not know about that and know about how serious now you're getting regarding your health and stuff. You said you hadn't been to the doctor in 15 years. Your family has a history of heart issues, and it kind of caught up to you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's I was one of those guys who it's kind of you think, oh, this is never going to happen, to me. And then I would always stay active. I always had kind of bad eating habits and stuff, but before, it didn't matter. I would always stay pretty skinny and stuff because I was also, in my spare time, a Zumba fitness instructor. So I was teaching 10 classes a week and, burning, 3,000 calories a day teaching those classes. And so I could just pretty much eat and drink whatever I wanted and stay pretty fit. But then I ruptured my Achilles tendon a few years ago playing basketball. And then ever since it never healed completely. And so I never went back to a Zumba. That was around the time I started working at Helium 10. I just was so busy. And so, I was, I haven't been doing the best, eating habits. And then I was playing basketball one day with my son. And I was like, man, I felt bad. I was like, all right, let's, I think I need to go to the urgent care. It wasn't even a, emergency room. I was just it feels weird. Something doesn't feel right. And I was like, no, I'm feeling a little bit better. Let me just go take a shower before we go to urgent care. And then I don't remember any of this, by the way, the whole couple days was a blur. And so people just recounted this to me. So I guess I'll step into the shower and then I just called for my wife out there, hey, something's wrong. And then I just collapsed and I was out, I was
in the shower,
on the ground. I made it out of the shower and, the whole thing, you see in the movies where I start, convulsing and foam coming out of my mouth because, I stopped breathing completely. And so she did CPR on me for 10 minutes.
So she knew CPR?
Yeah, she was CPR certified.
Oh, you're lucky there. You're lucky there.
Yeah, so that pretty much saved me, because you don't have an ambulance right next door, so it takes some time to come, and so they continued the CPR, but that whole time I wasn't breathing. I was out. They continued CPR. I didn't respond, but then when they the first defibrillator, they hit me, it didn't respond, and the second time they hit me with the paddles, that was when I finally responded and started breathing again. And so, at the time, they didn't know what my state was going to be after being, your liver is gone, your kidney, everything is dead pretty much, when that happens. Or my brain, obviously too. So they're like kind of worried what would happen. But yeah, like it's amazing. I came back and I was mainly myself. My memory is a little bit even worse than it was before. But that day I did a webinar. It's so crazy. That day I did. I don't know if it was bigger. I don't know if it was bigger, better launch or something.
After this
I
happened,
did earlier that day. It was after that.
From the hospital bed.
No. I did the webinar before the heart attack.
Okay.
But then I remember like one of the first things, like 2 days later, I was like, oh no, like what did they do? Like I was supposed to do bigger, better launch, or supposed to do this webinar. Like I let the company down. Like I wonder if my team like had to redo it for me, but I did it. But I had zero memory of it. And like, it was so surreal watching I was looking on YouTube to go see who did the webinar. I was in my hospital bed.
Yeah.
I was like, who did this webinar? Instead of me, was it Carrier? Was it Shivali? And I'm like, it was me. I was like, holy crap, I don't remember doing this. But yeah, that whole time is pretty scary. And so,
did you see when you were out? Did you see the light, or did you see?
No, I don't remember anything
floating above your body. Some of the stories that people tell.
Yep. I mean, if I did see anything, like I don't remember it, because like everything that I know was from what people tell me, and then I was just like looking at my ring video. Like to see like different things of me coming out, and then
me going to the ambulance and stuff
on the ambulance, on the basketball court, like what was happening. So like I was just like recapping, and then I could hear, I couldn't see it. I don't have ring video in my house, but then I could hear, like my family yelling and stuff when I was out, from the ring video. Is really surreal. And so like if that my message to people out there is like, don't wait for that to happen to you, because I mean, I don't know what the odds are about surviving something like that. That extreme, but it's not very good.
Yeah,
and so
you don't want in your heart, right?
Yeah. I have stents now, but you don't want to wait until something like this happens to like start making healthier choices. So that's why, like, I was like, 2023 is going to be time to get back into get big. It's not like I've been waiting. I've still been changing things a little here and there. Like
it's difficult. It's difficult to change.
It's difficult.
Yeah,
because I'm a foodie too. You know about me. Like I'm kind of like you. When I go to new countries, I look up Michelin restaurants and Yelp top 100 and try different street foods. And I I've never been like an alcoholic or something, but I love trying new drinks and stuff like that. And so it's hard when you're like that to try and take different steps. But I'm going to be pushing that more in my podcast. I'm going to be asking like all the guests. I've already started. I had Brandon like last week, and I was asking, him like, hey, what are you guys doing for like your mental health and your physical health and just recreation? Because I think those are things that you don't hear too much about on podcasts and webinars and things. You hear about strategies, and we're always going to have that. But then like, I want people to understand that, hey, you need to enjoy life as well as entrepreneurs, and you need to take care of your health. And let's talk to what's working for the other people out there.
So, I mean, as far as travel is one of your big things. And you take trips. I mean, you've been to Pakistan a couple times, to talk to the Helium 10 guys and Helium 10 audience over there.
Yep.
You are known now for this Maldives strategy. That started with what, like episode 300? Was that the first one? And
200. Yeah.
200
was the first. Mm-hmm.
And then every 50 or 100 or something like that, you go back to the Maldives and you like do some update or some new kind of thing. And you've been there, 4 times now, I think? 4 episodes?
Yeah,
something like that?
like 4 or 5, yeah.
So, Helium 10, you said it's not paying for you to go there. And I got engaged in the Maldives, and the Maldives is beautiful. It's far. I mean, it's
yeah.
For those of you who don't know, it's in the Indian Ocean. And so to get there, you got to go to like Dubai or Singapore or somewhere like that, and then head over. But it's a beautiful place, and it's when you land at the airport there, you either take a boat or a seaplane, and all the resorts are out on like their own little remote motus, their own little remote islands. It's a beautiful place, but how are you doing that? How are you? I mean, that's not a cheap trip, and you're staying in some of the best places there, and you're probably actually flying business class. You're a taller guy, and you're not going to be stuck in the back with your knees in your chin. So how are you doing that? Is that coming from credit card miles that you're earning from the PPC you're running for the businesses that you sell, or how's that happening?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. I love like travel hacking and doing things like that. I've been traveling. I haven't been to the number of countries you have. I'm only at like something like 40 or 41 or something like that. But I think I took my first trip when I was like 2 months old or something. My parents were into traveling, so I've always been into traveling too. And then so the last 5-10 years, I've really gotten into like travel hacking, like points. And so almost all of what I do, I still have to pay for a lot of it, but for like upgrading to business class and staying in fancy hotels and stuff, like almost that's all like 100%, 100% free based on, using the PPC and then just, spending it. Like I would do wholesale a lot too, not necessarily for the profit, but just for the cash flow, to be able to, use credit cards, to be getting like, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 dollars a month worth of credit card points.
So you're doing wholesale, not so much for the margin the small margin you can make off of doing the wholesale, but it's more to earn credit card miles. And that's exactly. Basically how you're seeing your profit is through that versus actual dollars.
Yeah. And then it gives me more sandboxes to play in, because I think sometimes people think Amazon's only about private label, but there's tons of really successful wholesale sellers out there. And so I've been able to come up with some like different strategies of things that Helium 10 can do based on what I was doing, at the wholesale level. Like there's one little tiny tool that almost nobody knows is strictly for wholesale numbers. We developed in partnership with, what was his name? I forgot his name, but he's been on the podcast a few times. And it's kind of like, hey, if you have a listing,
formula guys?
Wholesale formula guy.
Yeah.
If you have a listing and there's like 3 existing people battling for the buy box, or they're within 2% of the buy box, it's like estimates your sales if you were to become the next seller on there, because you can't just say, I'm going to take over all the sales. You always just kind of match the buy box. And so because I was doing that kind of stuff, I was able to put it in practice. So but the main point of doing wholesale was to keep my credit cards, in the tens of thousands of dollars every month, so I can get those points.
So you're going to continue doing that?
I kind of stopped it now, and so now it's harder.
What about the Maldives? Are you guys?
Oh, Maldives? Yeah, like for sure. Like I just did that a few weeks ago. Like my family really doesn't like going there. They've only gone with me like a couple times. So usually when I go, it's just by myself.
They don't like going to the Maldives? Or is it just because
they don't like flying?
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
they don't like flying. And then like you said, that's like a 28 hours. It's like 14 hours to Dubai. Then you got to lay over for like 5 hours, and it's another 10 hours. And so they hate flying, and so it's like pulling teeth. And then plus it's expensive. Like to use points for me, it's easy, but then to come up with enough points to cover a family of 4 to go, it's a little bit harder. But yeah, like that is my favorite place in the whole wide world. Like is the Maldives, and like I don't see myself ever stopping going there.
If you typically pass through Dubai on the way there, do you stop in Dubai? I know one time you did like a little meetup or something at the airport. But have you actually spent any time in Dubai? I was just there a few weeks ago. I've been there a few times, and it's nice. It's a really cool place.
It is. Like, it's super hot, like most times of the year. But I was able to I went to the, what was it called? The World Fair or whatever that was just in Dubai, or International something or other. Yeah. So like I went there on my way to the Maldives, and I took like a day or two over there. I actually did an Amazon meetup as well. That's actually one of the, I know you get recognized at different places. That's one of the few times where I went to something that had nothing to do with Amazon. Like if there's a big Amazon conference, of course I'll run into like Amazon sellers at the airport or something, because they're just all over the place. But that was the first time where I was just in the middle of nowhere, and I necessarily didn't get recognized, but I was wearing a Helium 10 shirt, and one of the TSA agents at the Dubai airport was like, "Oh, Helium 10, I just started that because I don't want to do this my whole life. I'm trying to like learn to sell." So that was kind of cool. But yeah, I love Dubai.
I'm surprised you don't get recognized more. I get recognized, obviously, like you said, at a Amazon events, in the airport and stuff around that, you would, but just randomly at the grocery store and in San Diego or somewhere, you don't get recognized that much?
Well, here's the thing. Like, a lot of people don't realize this about me because of my personality is kind of over the top, and they think I'm this big extrovert, and stuff. I'm like one of the most antisocial introverts you'll ever know. Like, during the pandemic, like I would go weeks without even leaving my house. And so like I don't go out, I don't go eat out, I don't really go to the movies, like, go to church, and that's about it. And so like I don't really get out there, that much. I'm just like pure definition of a homebody. And so like maybe if I would go out more and go out to eat and stuff like that, it might happen more. But yeah, since I don't do that, like I guess it never comes up.
Yeah, I've been recognized like 5 times just in Austin, either at the airport or one time I was at a HEB supermarket here, and I was just checking out, putting my stuff in the bag, and a girl comes and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, have you ever heard of Helium 10?" I'm like, yeah. And then she looks at me and she's like, I knew it. You're the guy that does the Freedom Ticket on Helium 10. I was like, yeah, that's me. She's like, so nice to meet you. I had another time.
Speaking of which, didn't you wear the Freedom Ticket shirt to the World Cup final?
Yeah, I actually, They when we went to the World Cup final, my wife and I went over to Qatar, and we were at that epic final game, live and in person, and we were trying to get Argentina shirts, because she's from Colombia, so she's going to support, the Latin American team. And I was like, no problem, I'll support Argentina too. But we found she's a tiny little girl, so hers is like extra small or small, and she got like the last one on the shelf. And then we spent a half a day going around like to the Adidas store and to like everywhere in the little souks trying to find me something, and we couldn't find anything. It's just gone. And then I need a bigger size, much bigger size, and so I was like, I don't know what I got. The closest thing to blue that I have is the Helium 10, the shirt I used in the Helium 10, because I got like 6 of these shirts because we did the Helium 10, the Freedom Ticket training. So I didn't want to stink because we shot that over like five days or whatever. So I had all these different shirts. So
if you wear that more often, like going out, I bet you get recognized even more because that shirt is legendary.
But another time I got recognized, I was at a Walmart in Buda, which is a suburb of Austin, buying something, and I come home, and like an hour later I get a text, like a Facebook Messenger text message, and says, hey, you don't know me, but I think I just saw you at the Walmart in Buda. You're the Helium 10 guy. And I was like, geez, man, it's like can't go anywhere. I mean, if I gotta be careful not to adjust my underwear or anything. You never know who's watching. But yeah, speaking of the Freedom Ticket too, there's a cool little story around that. We've done 3 full versions of the Freedom Ticket, and then we keep it updated. So in 2021, right after the Prosper show was in July, and that was a show where everybody got COVID, basically. I remember everybody went to the nightclub, to Hakkasan or whatever, and pretty much everybody there ended up, like 40, 50 people ended up with COVID, some pretty bad. But right after that, my wife and I came over to Irvine because we were spending several days shooting some updates and stuff on the Freedom Ticket. And I remember you were in there, and Shivali was in there, and we were just some really long days. And you had a little bit of a cough, maybe a little bit of a fever, and you're starting to get worried because I think you had a big trip to Pakistan or somewhere coming up.
Yeah.
And so you were like getting COVID tested every day. I had a little bit of sniffles and a little bit of things, and I was like, I think I'll be okay. And then at the end of this, on that Friday, when we wrapped up, you're like, hey, everybody, I want to take everybody, the crew and everybody out to eat. There's this Mexican restaurant that's like my favorite. I've been going there since I was a child. It's awesome. It's incredible.
I just ate there yesterday, by the way.
I'm going to take everybody there. So we go, I don't know, it was 10 of us or something like that. And we're eating. And then after the dinner, I go, and my wife and I get back in our car, and I was like, baby, that was the worst damn Mexican food I've ever had in my life. I don't know what the heck Bradley was thinking. He says this is his favorite place. He's been going. This was horrible. And she's like, I was like, was it to you? And she's like, I'm not a big fan of Mexican food, so it was okay. I was like, it had no taste. It was bland. She's like, baby, I think you need to go get a COVID test. So the next day, I go and find a place and get a PCR test, and sure as heck, I had COVID, and I lost my sense of smell and everything. So I have to go back to that place now, so I can actually taste that, so I can see
there you go.
See why you're so high on it. Because after that that visit, I was like, I couldn't taste anything.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. But yeah,
Good
so
story.
in Qatar, I had to wear the I represented Helium 10, in Qatar.
Well, Messi can thank you for for his victory.
Exactly. I brought the luck. No, that was an amazing game. I don't really have any desire to ever go back to Qatar. I mean, we flew Qatar Airways, which is the best business class I've probably been on.
So you got those seats where it closes.
Yeah, you have like a door.
Spooling close. Yeah,
you have a little door. And it's in that airline, the service. I mean, they met us at the sidewalk with our bags. They had a special security lane and special first class lounge that you just go straight to. You don't have to go through the regular security or anything. It was top level service, but Qatar is not really a place I have any desire to ever go back to. But Dubai, on the other hand, we went there afterwards, and Dubai is I've been there. It'd been about 10 years or so since I've been there, and it's changed a lot, and it's definitely on the list to go back to and hang out. I mean, we did a rooftop, like the 50th floor rooftop, 360-degree infinity pool overlooking the palms, which was really cool. We went to a butterfly garden, which was really, really cool. We did went out into the desert and did all the dunes. We did shisha lounge, overlooking. They have a version of like the Las Vegas fountains that are in front of the Bellagio, but like 10 times the size. That's really nice, and you can sit there with a shisha, and smoke some grape or watermelon tobacco and watch these fountains. It's really cool, and did a bunch of other stuff. But Dubai is definitely a good playground to go to. We had a meal there, and this. I don't know if you saw my post on Facebook. You talking about meals earlier, where it's a totally immersive experience. This place is 9 courses, but every course was a different theme, and the entire restaurant changed. So there's I think there's 10 of us in the restaurant, but they would completely change the scenes, the walls, the settings. They would grab you by the chair and move you to another part of the room and have something set up there. It was amazing. It was amazing. But yeah, so the next time you pass through, going on the way to the Maldives, you got to spend 3 or 4 days in Dubai.
All right, I'll do that
for sure. So you're still selling as well, right? Like you said, you have a little warehouse set up at your house, and you're still selling. And one of the things that you like to do is you like to experiment. And so you were just telling me earlier, like you were staying up all last night till the wee hours of the morning, playing with brand analytics and with some of the other tools that Amazon has, just doing experiments and like going and buying products on Amazon, seeing how it affects stuff. You really like to get in there and under the hood and play around and figure stuff out, right?
Yeah, it's fun for me. Like, I think in my position, I have to be doing stuff like this. Like I can't stand, you and I both can't stand these people who try and, come off as gurus or whatever, and they haven't even sold on Amazon in like a couple of years. They don't even know what the heck they're talking about. So like I've always wanted to keep my knowledge fresh by doing experiments. But then like in the last couple of years, Amazon has come out with so much stuff that I think most of us sellers never would have dreamed Amazon would come out with. Like 4 years ago, I remember people would pay like $40,000 to get some special reports that Amazon had, like that was only available sometimes to vendors or just really high level sellers. And it would cost them like $40,000 a year or something crazy like that. And nowadays for free, better information is even out, just Amazon is just putting it out. And my favorite has always still been brand analytics. I know Amazon has come out with a lot of other stuff like search query performance and opportunity explorer, but brand analytics was the one that was like always rock solid. It was whenever I could just clearly, test it out, and I could predict what was going to happen in brand analytics. And sure enough, it did. This other stuff, it's taking me a little bit more to try and figure out, like, because they're not talking about the same things or the same, it's not the same way to calculate search volume. And it's not the same way to calculate, sales and different things like that. So it's taking me a little bit longer to try and like really lock down, what it's about. But this is the kind of stuff that, people at Helium 10, they're not asking me to, stay up, half the night to do this, but I just get started and I can't stop because it's so fun. It's so fun for me to like just start diving into this stuff.
How do you think all this, as Amazon's releasing more and more data, as they say, straight from the horse's mouth, how do you think that's going to affect tools like Helium 10?
It's great. I love it because first of all, you can validate, more. Like it's not just, Helium 10 says this is the search volume, but it's like, wait a minute. Let me compare this to brand analytics. Oh, it's kind of in the same order. Oh, I'll be danged. Helium 10 had it right. Or So, like other than that, it's just like, we believe in our algorithms, but a random person off the street, like how would they know that, how can they validate that what we're saying is within the realm of possibility, without this stuff. So the more that Amazon releases, number one, the more people can validate, so they can trust the data more. And then number two, it gives us more things to integrate in the tools. Finally, after 2 years, Amazon made brand analytics available in the API so that we can now have it inside of Helium 10, as long as, we can detect that the customer is brand registered. For years, we couldn't do that because it was against Amazon terms of service. And so it not only allows us to validate our own things, but it allows us to give functionality to users that they never had. Like my favorite thing is looking at who are the top 3 clicked or purchased in brand analytics, and then check out what their average rank was, organic and sponsored, for a month. So it's like overlaying brand analytics with Helium 10 data, because sometimes you look at just the organic rank of like one of our coffin shelves, and we're just kind of like shadow banned from Amazon for some strange reason. Like we cannot get past like position 10 or 15 on page 1, but we are the number 1 clicked or number 2 in brand analytics. And then if you're actually looking at it in Helium 10, you can, with the one click, you can see why. It's like, oh, they're the number 1 sponsored, our coffin shelf is the number 1 sponsored position, but it's number 15. So on this one, it's like, hey, I don't have to be at the top of the page organically to be one of the top. I just got to make sure I'm at the top, sponsored. And so before Amazon made this data available, like you had no idea who was the one who was getting the most clicks or who was getting the most purchases. Like even Helium 10 doesn't know that data, right? And so like now I think the more Amazon releases, it makes things better for tool companies like Helium 10, and at the end of the day, it's better for the sellers out there.
We could probably sit here and talk for hours more, but just to wrap this up, what do you think is going to happen? What's coming down the pike in 2023 for both Helium 10? Maybe a sneak of some sort of, I know you can't spill all the beans, but a sneak of some cool tool that's coming out, or a couple cool things, or direction that's going to go. Plus the whole Amazon industry as a whole. What do you think? What 2023 is going to bring for sellers and software?
Well, for Helium 10, one thing that I want to see us do more of, and I make fun of sellers. I'll say, oh yeah, sellers are just so lazy out there. Like they'll pay $150 for other software that just saves a couple of clicks, and it's because they're lazy. But like part of that's serious, part of that's just in jest. But at the end of the day, we're all busy people, and we want to save time. Like time is money. And so like I think I could see in Helium 10 we're going to be trying to focus on things that not necessarily is going to reinvent the wheel of how you look at analytics, but how we can save people time, and maybe save people from having to hire VAs out there to do a whole bunch of manual stuff. Where how can we not necessarily, I don't want to use the word necessarily automation, I know that's a buzzword, but basically look out for Helium 10 to be coming out with different tools and functions that really just give Amazon sellers more time back without having to take a whole bunch of steps and knowing how to do 75 different filters and aggregate lists and download Excel files and stuff like that. As far as Amazon goes, who knows, like all of this stuff that they've been doing lately on the advertising side, a lot of it's just completely, nobody could have ever, predicted that they would be launching all these different analytics and stuff. And I see them doubling down, even more, and especially on the advertising side, like they're going to have to, keep validating, like making it worthwhile for sellers to put all the money into advertising. And so they're going to have to give that value back somehow, whether that's through analytics or whether that's through cool other spots, like who knows, like, Amazon did the Prime football, and they've obviously got, Twitch and all these things. I think you're going to see more, it might be more commonplace, like outside of just maybe DSP, where even regular sellers are going to have access to start advertising on platforms and mediums that they never had access to before. So I'll look forward to that.
What do you think AI is? Does Helium 10 have any plans to integrate some of this AI for like list building and testing? Chat GPT, next week's episode is all about that. My guest will be talking about how AI can be used in e-commerce. Does Helium 10 have any, some of this AI, like ChatGPT, it can actually write many different versions of your listing, especially if you're not a non-native English speaker, can make a huge difference.
I mean, we've been looking at that stuff for even before when it was cool. And now, like, I don't think any of us would have predicted how advanced it would be. Like, it's just kind of scary. Actually, kind of reminds me of like Terminator or something like the world that we're moving to. But yeah, like where we can incorporate that into Helium 10 in the future, like if it can help Amazon sellers, absolutely. And just like you said, non-native speakers. I mean, even native speakers. Sometimes we might not be the best with words. We're not all natural writers, whether we're native speaker or not. And this, like things like the Chat GPT and these other things, like they can just, you give them like keywords and they can just come up with something much more eloquent than you could.
What can analyze like reviews?
Yeah.
I'm using it in conjunction with X-Ray, downloading, all the 4 and 5 star reviews, and then doing another one with the 1, 2, and 3 star, and grabbing those phrases, those most common phrases out. And I'm saying, like, if it's the negative phrases, write me a description using these phrases, but make sure it's positive. So it does the opposite. So if one of the big negative phrases is the handle is hot to the touch and falls off or something, it'll flip that. And in the writing, it will say, this handle is super strong. You never have to worry about it coming off. You'll never even feel it. It's soft as a baby's bottom or whatever. I'm making that up. And then I'd use it for the positive ones too. But there's it's not perfect, and there's still some issues with it. But I see that there could be a lot of good stuff around that, and that's next week's episode of the AMPM podcast is all about that. So make sure you tune in. I think it's going to blow some people's minds and really enlighten them on some of the opportunities and the things that's coming down the pike regarding that. And this is true AI. There's a lot of software tools, PPC management tools that say they use AI to manage your bids. It's not AI. That's just algorithms. That's just marketing speak. So you got to be careful there on that. But the true AI is really, really cool, and not just for text, but even for images and doing like testing on images and stuff. But hey, Bradley, I really appreciate taking the time today to come on. Make sure everybody out there, you listen to the Serious Sellers podcast. You can find that on your favorite podcasting platform. It comes out 3 times a week. That's Bradley hosting that. He's got some awesome guests on that, so be sure to check out that. And make sure you also always sign up for the Bigger, Better launch. That's once a month where Bradley and the team come on. They show you all the latest tools and things in Helium 10. And Helium 10 Elite as well. If you're not a member of Helium 10 Elite, it's closed right now, so you can't get in. But it may open up maybe in March or so. I think I heard you say for a short while where you can get in, and just keep an eye on that, because some of these advanced tools they either come out first to Helium 10 members and let them play with it months before it goes to everybody who has a membership to Helium 10, or sometimes there's exclusive tools as well that only Helium 10 members get. Plus, you get the training. Plus, you get the weekly roundtable, sometimes with Bradley, sometimes with Carrie, other members of the team, and then I do it once a month, which is really, really valuable. So, Bradley, I really appreciate it, and best of luck in 2023, and I hope your health stays good and continues to even get better, and look forward to seeing you either in Irvine or at the next event, or who knows, maybe another Bulls and Apes little get-together or something. Never know.
Yep. Sounds good. Same to you.
I hope you enjoyed Bradley and I's little chat there. Lots of insight and a look behind the curtain at Helium 10 a little bit. Next week, we're going to have a really cool episode talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it's going to impact e-commerce. So don't miss next week's episode of the AMPM podcast. It's going to be a really good one. I hope to see you on that episode. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for both the Serious Sellers podcast that comes out 3 times a week and the AMPM podcast, which comes out every Thursday. By subscribing, you can make sure you get notified, or it can automatically download straight into your favorite podcast player. And before we leave this week, I guess I want to leave you with some words of wisdom. As Mark Twain once famously said, "It's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know that just ain't so." It's not what you know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know that just ain't so. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the AMPM podcast.